Hi, Jared. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this opening event of the Writing Generation series for the fall of 2024. We're so happy to welcome both new and returning participants to the series. This is a series that is co-sponsored by the SFCC Library and the Creative Writing Department at the Santa Fe Community College. For those of you who I don't know yet, my name is Valerie Nye, and I'm so happy to see you all this evening. So tonight marks the beginning of a series of engaging and inspiring literary events. Unfortunately, Carla, who was scheduled to read this evening, couldn't join us due to some last-minute personal matters, and we send her our best and wish her good luck with everything and hope she'll be able to join us in the future. Tonight, stepping in for her, I'm really happy to introduce the co-founder of this writing series and a talented member of the SFCC faculty, Austin Eichelberger. Austin is an accomplished writer and visual artist, and he's graciously agreed to share some of his short stories with us tonight. With an MA from Longwood University and an MFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts, Austin has published extensively and has been recognized with nominations for prestigious awards, including the Pushcart Prize. For those of you who are new to the series, and I know many of you are, the structure of our series aims to provide an immersive listening experience and then deepening your connection with the creative process. So on one Wednesday, that's tonight, we will feature a reading by an author, and on the following Wednesday, we will hold a writing session led by the same author. We are providing these experiences each month of the fall semester, and the series is open to anyone who would like to join us anywhere in the world. So if you would like to invite others to join us, please do. These sessions are a chance to delve into writing with guided prompts and gain encouragement from both the authors and fellow attendees. Please note the writing sessions are dedicated to craft writing, and there will not be an opportunity to read your work aloud during these sessions. So don't feel pressure to write perfection as we're working on these projects. We encourage everyone to participate in both the reading and the writing sessions, and it's personal enrichment for you to gain the most from the experiences offered. In addition to tonight's event, I'd like to highlight an exciting educational opportunity here at SFCC. For those of you who don't know, SFCC offers an associate's degree in creative writing and a certificate in creative writing, and these are available entirely online. As I mentioned, Austin is one of the faculty members in the program, and the program is designed for writers who wish to refine their craft and engage deeply with literature and looking at a diverse range of voices. Whether you're a beginning writer, just beginning your journey, or looking to elevate your skills, the program will provide flexibility to study anywhere while receiving the same education as our on-campus students. So for more information, I am putting a URL in the chat that will provide more information for you. So thank you for being here tonight. It's an honor to be working with Austin on this, and I will hand it over to you, and you can kick off the program for us. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you, Val. Let me see. Okay. I have a little intro too. So this is an intro about the creative writing program from the perspective of one of the professors. And then we'll get started. This reading is brought to you by the Santa Fe Community College Library and Creative Writing Program, as Val said. We're thrilled to have you join us tonight for this special reading event, and we hope you'll come back to celebrate the power of words and storytelling at our future events. Tonight's gathering is an invitation to those who have a passion for the written word. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a writer, whether you'd like to craft compelling fiction, pen evocative poetry, or explore the world of nonfiction, SFCC is waiting to hear your voice. We all believe that writing is not only a useful and practical skill, but an art form that has the potential to transform lives and connect people across time and space. The SFCC Creative Writing Program nurtures aspiring writers, providing them with the tools, guidance, and inspiration to take their creative passions to new heights. The faculty of our institution are published authors and professional editors, and students work closely with professors and peers to develop, revise, and publish creative and academic writing in a range of genres and formats. SFCC offers a certificate and an associate degree in English language creative writing. Some SFCC creative writing students go on to complete their bachelor's degrees, giving them the skills and experience to submit manuscripts for publication, pursue a career in editing, or continue their studies in creative writing. Please see the chat for links to our program website, where you can find more information about our school's offerings, including our literary journal, the Santa Fe Literary Review. And we actually have student interns for the Santa Fe Literary Review. So as a creative writing student at SFCC, you can work on the review and get some of that real world experience. And as Val said, our entire program can now be completed online. For those of you considering your own creative writing journey, we encourage you to get in touch and ask us any questions you have about our program. Whether you're an experienced writer looking to take a single course or a complete novice ready to explore your creative potential, we have classes and resources for you, and we're waiting to hear your voice. I just want to thank everybody before I begin. I want to thank everyone for being here. And I want to thank our local press, of course, too, for bringing in such a great audience. Okay, I'm going to read you all some short stories. I'm going to begin with a more traditional form short story, and then I'm going to move into something a little different, but I'll tell you about that as we get to it. So this first story is called A Lung Full of Air, A Lung Full of Air. And it placed fourth in Pithead Chapel's 2016 Larry Brown Short Story Award, and then was published by them. And Pithead Chapel is an amazing journal if you don't know them. They're really wonderful. Okay, A Lung Full of Air. Waves crash softly away from the square floating dock on Crater Lake, the one by the beach that's held in place by a heavy chain connected to the slick wooden bottom and rooted deep in the muck 20 feet below. Alex sits closer to the shore, his palms flat on the rocking planks as I sit with my knees up, elbows perched on them. I glance behind me at the powerboats humming across the water, the big brick houses across the lake from the state-owned stretch of sand where we gathered, then turn my head to the beach, the girls sunning in their new bikinis, the guys cluttered by the grill, Shauna's two kids in the water and her watching them from the crescent of the shore. Shauna blocks the sun from her eyes with one hand as I remember leaning on my kitchen counter, finishing a Milky Way, when she promised over the phone that there would be enough people here that I wouldn't even have to look at Alex, that she'd be sure to keep an eye on him and make sure he wasn't bothering me. I hear laughter as the youngest kid, kicking the water from a green inflatable crocodile, drifts to shore by the boat ramp, and Shauna pushes the float back out into the water. I wish it was shaped like something more docile. A duck, maybe. It's weird, huh, Mark? Alex turns to me, his tricep flexing like it would when he used to bend over me in the bed of his dad's Chevy. What is? I look at the tall pines that border the sand, then hold close to the uneven line of red clay shore that curves out from the beach to make this tiny cove. I recognize the pattern the trunks make after coming here for years. In high school, Shauna and I used to drink here when the moon was full because we could bring our boyfriends and there was plenty of space to sneak off, be alone with them. She brought whoever she happened to be dating, a dropout or stoner art student or a man too old to go to our school. I was always with Alex. That we're all here together again. Alex swings his hands around when he talks like an orchestra conductor. We used to make fun of him for it, but he would just flick us off as one of his hands swooshed by. It's been what, 3 years? I lower my hand to the wood beneath me. 4. I peel a large splinter from the dock. Fucking dangerous. Since we were all together. Alex looks at me. Damn, it's been that long? He turns his body toward mine now, spreading his legs so that his dripping feet sit on either side of me. Doesn't seem like it. I look up at him, the even-toned olive skin over his swimmer's muscles, the dark blonde hair that falls over his eyes, the bright red swimsuit. No, it doesn't, I say. I toss the splinter into the water where it floats like the inflatable crocodile by the shore. My mind, like I knew it would when I saw the float, even when Shauna first told me that we were coming to the lake, starts grasping for every image of a crocodile I've ever seen and places them all in the water beneath me. Sometimes it's not crocodiles, but it's always something. For years, beginning after Shauna and I watched Jaws when we were 8, it was sharks, even in fresh water. He looks straight into my eyes. So what have you been up to? He says as he leans back on his arms. Nothing. He doesn't need to hear that I'm still not over him after 3 fucking years and I haven't left this podunk town, that I work too much at the deli and drink whenever I'm not working. What about you? Well, he says, turning to the line of trees to his right, Daryl and I had a one-bedroom up in Richmond, but then he left a few months ago. I kept the apartment. Beyond him, the sparrows flit from branch to branch. Got a job as a bank teller downtown. Alex flicks his head back in my direction, moving the hair from his eyes. You want to swim? I look down at my baggy t-shirt and loose jeans. Nope. He blinks and pouts his lips. Why not? You like swimming. I used to like swimming. The crocodiles beneath me swing past my mind's eye, stirring up sediment as they circle the thick chain beneath the water. Besides, I didn't bring a suit. That's why I wanted to row out. Alex glances behind me at the paint-flaked boat I rowed to the dock. He swam behind the boat, despite the fact that I had already told him to leave me alone. I give Shauna a death glare, but I know she's too far away to catch it. Alex stands, his calves and forearms suddenly solid and taut as he stretches. Well, I'm going to swim. He does a perfect swan dive into the water by the boat, making the dock sway. I lean my head back and shut my eyes, the warmth from the sun creeping along my face and neck. In my mind, I can see the hungry crocs below waiting in the shade while he dives before zooming up from the silt to catch his leg, his arm, his mouth opening to scream, bubbles floating to the top as the water turns red like in the movies. Alex surfaces and blows water from his lips before taking a deep breath and dipping back under. I pull my t-shirt up to let the sun touch me, the soft cotton lightly brushing my face, and try to ignore the skin that folds over the waist of my jeans, the weight that's crept back ever since he left and I started volunteering for more shifts, and I lay the t-shirt on the dock behind me before I lie down. I don't know why he's so stupid. I barely swam the last time we were here after graduation. We swam all the way out, but I only thought about getting on this dock and lying in the sun together. We stole touches and stopped to kiss under the water until we reached the dock. It was new then, the boards freshly lacquered, the metal not yet rusted. I jumped in with a snorkel mask to try and follow the chain down to the bottom, and when I looked around in the murky brown, I could almost see rows of rectangular white teeth charging out of the depths faster than I could hope to swim. I knew they weren't there, and I do now, but I still told Alex I was tired and made him stay close as we swam back. It's always what I can't see that scares me, the places where I know things lurk, but I can't sense them. That's why I shut the bedroom door when I'm alone in the apartment at night. You never know what's creeping up behind you. Come on, get in the water, Mark, Alex calls as I sit up, water splashing onto my feet, speckling my jeans. No, I say to his head bobbing a few feet out in the blue-brown water. I'm not wearing trunks. So what? You have boxers. Come on, it's fun. He splashes more water onto the dock. I roll my eyes and lie back down as my stomach churns. Why is he being like this? He was the one who made me leave, told me he had grown past me. Why? Alex's voice is low and a little raspy as he says, Come on, babe. The same tone it would always fall to when he whispered to me. I turn my head to see his hands wrapped around the gray metal poles of the footladder, his eyes trained on me. Did he just call me babe? I cough lightly to clear my throat and sit up, folding my forearms over my lap. You're not allowed to call me that, Alex. I look down at the near white wood of the bleached dock, the twisting dark lines that show the color of the wood at its core. The dock rocks as Alex climbs the ladder and I exhale hard, the muscles in my hands flexing tight. Why not, Mark? I used to call you babe all the time. He stands over me, smiling down, his abs flexed in the sun, drops of water shining on his skin, then kneels, softly placing his hip, then his elbow on the wood beside me as my shoulders and neck tense. His wet fingers graze my bicep and the muscle jumps, the skin tight with goosebumps. Remember? The water and the crocodiles, the dock and the shore wash away as I look at the bright sky and the slowly moving clouds and think about that word, babe, that single word. When he would squeeze my hand at home football games in the back of the bleachers and wink as he said it, the times when his jock friends would sneer as I waited for him at the pool and he would say it into my hair when they were out of sight, the handwritten notes on Christmas presents and my birthday, breathing it in my ear because I told him to be quiet while my parents slept in the next room or while we had his dad's truck for the weekend. when he actually told me, babe, we had a good run, but I think Daryl won this one. I sit up and push his hand away. Shut the fuck up, Alex. What? His stomach flexes as he speaks, and I fold my arms over my belly. Shut up. I turn and grab my t-shirt, pull it over my head, and stand, taking a step toward the boat as he scrambles. What are you doing? He steps between me and the boat, the layer of fine hair on his chest catching and reflecting the sun's light. Beneath us, a crocodile's black eye gleams. I'm leaving, I say. I don't want to be trapped out on this dock with you. I stare at him, trying my best to keep a don't you even face on as a shiver runs through my knees. He reaches out for my shoulder. It's just been a while since I've seen you. I step back over the shallow puddles he left on the planks, the dock and boat mashing together, our movement driving them into each other, forcing waves out toward the shore. I know it has, I say, and hopefully it's going to be even longer this next time. I turn back to the beach and step to the edge of the seesawing dock, my bare toes clutching the worn rubber bumper that goes along the rim. The crocodiles drift closer in my mind, lingering where my shadow cuts through the sunlit water. Need to get to that rowboat, and my heartbeat doubles, my neck goes slick with sweat. The muscles of my legs feel like they're going to explode as the sound of a speedboat swings nearer behind me. Mark, Alex says, come on, I just want to be close to you. The dark green ridges of the crocs flash in the water before me, their jaws opening as they twist and swim around the chain, as they wait in the shade of the dock, ready to flick their tails and split the surface with jagged scales. Like I used to be, he says. When I feel Alex's fingertips on my back, I suck in a breath, filling my lungs despite the pressure in my chest, and leap away, kicking wildly at the claws and teeth waiting to slash and swallow me whole. My skin goes cold as the shore disappears from sight and Alex's voice fades behind me into the din of rushing water. So that was our first story. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chana. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, I love that story. Glad you all do too. Let me see. Okay, we still have plenty of time. Uh, my session next week, I'm going to pause the creative reading for half a second just to say my creative session next week, the writing generation session, is going to be about flash fiction, which is super short fiction, typically 1,000 words or less, though some people say 2,000 words or less. That story was about 6,000 words. So it would be shorter than that story. And I'm actually going to help you write one in the session next week. And so I wanted to read you a few of those because one of the forms we're going to play with next week, perhaps the only form we'll get to, but we'll see. I'm going to try to do more than one, is a list story. That is a story that is a list where the list itself tells the story. So I wanted to give you a few of those and show you a few of those that I've done, just so you could sort of think about it over the next week. And then when we come together, we'll have some really good, juicy stuff. And I want to emphasize, I got this idea from authors who wrote pretty mundane lists. There's one that's called Our Spring Catalog. It's a writer writing a spring catalog for a book company. And so he's describing the books that they're going to sell in the spring, but he hates the books that he's going to sell in the spring. So each description of each book gets gradually more and more unhinged and angrier. And anyway, just to say, my lists are not quite that mundane or normal. I like to make up sort of more exotic lists to use, but you may do either, as you'll see next week. Just to put that out there. Yeah, okay, that's where we'll go from here. Okay, this next one is called Places I Imagine My Wife. And Val mentioned that I've been nominated for a pushcart. This was a piece of mine that was nominated for a pushcart. Just so you all know, the pushcart is a prize that is given to authors every year who are published in literary journals. So those of us who do not have a book, but do have publications, can get recognized through the pushcart prizes that do a really wonderful job of combing through literary journals to pull out the best pieces and award those. Just to put that out there. Just to put that out there, that's what that is. So yeah, this is Places I Imagine My Wife. And because it's a list story done in a very similar style to Jamaica Kincaid's Girl, This is written in one long sentence with semicolons separating each item. Just FYI. There's a part of, well, no. I was gonna say, should I share it, but share screen, but it won't fit on the page. So, okay, this is places I imagine my wife. The wooded hiking trails just outside of town, pushing Evan's stroller beside Prince and Duchess and breathing deep the thawing air of the now blooming mountains. The grocery store, choosing the least wilted head of lettuce by picking up every single one. Watching pedestrians through her classroom window between periods, her chin resting in her hand as the middle schoolers noisily take their seats. Sixth floor of the hospital, just once every few weeks for treatments that plenty of people live to laugh about. On her bright purple beach towel, sprawled with a drunk smirk like when we visited California our first spring break together, wearing the aviator sunglasses she found in that frothy water. Smiling in her favorite dress, the blue one with little flowers printed on it, at our first date restaurant, which was torn down just last year. Our bed, in a wheezing sleep, her cheekbones more apparent and her hair thinner, the color grayed and mousy. The driver's seat of that rusted Chevy pickup she drove until Evan was born, wearing those same aviators, no longer a joke, as she leans one arm out the open window and squints against the sun. The back porch of our first apartment, a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other as she laughs her way through a joke while Prince and Duchess, puppies then, both look at her sideways. Evan's nursery, watching him with sunken eyes as he naps despite Duchess's constant low whine in Prince's absence. Everywhere, anywhere, until eventually, inevitably, her pale face over satin, that same blue dress and those dark eyelashes pulled together, her face fading behind endless flower arrangements and weepy relatives and refrigerated casseroles, waning from the bedroom and the nursery and the yard, but also becoming more solid, somehow realer than before, the textures more vibrant, the colors truer than when we were together on the Golden Beach, across the table at our restaurant, jogging on the trails in the mountains with Prince at her side, while behind them dogwoods sprout pastel buds and bright wildflowers at their feet splash open in blue. So that one is places I imagine my wife. I once had a man come up to me after a reading and say, I hope he found her. That was the best feedback I've ever gotten for that story. She's dead, so he didn't, but I still thought it was hilarious feedback. Thought it was great. But so I hope that showed you the form a little bit, where you can just list things to create a narrative and to create some movement and character development. So here's another one. This one, the entire piece is one sentence long. It was published by the journal Nanoism, which publishes only Twitter-length fiction. And it's actually original Twitter length, not the new double long tweets. And so it's 140 characters, including punctuation, including spaces, including everything. Nanoism, Nanoism. They're so wonderful. They're so wonderful. And they're actually a paying journal. They pay you like $1.30, but for a tweet, that's pretty fair. They're really wonderful. I love them a lot. I like to support them. They've published me several times, and this is one of my favorite pieces by them. One thing they do is they publish without titles. And so I'm going to give the title to you. It wasn't published under that title, but the title is My Deepest Regrets. And this is a list story in a single sentence. My deepest regrets. I regret little. Cutting my sister's arm on accident, breaking Granny's stained glass, running over my neighbor's cat, denying it all later. And that might be the size of some that we write next week, and that's totally fine. It's one thing I love about fiction. It can be contained in tiny, tiny little containers or in massive ones. And this is the final piece I'll read tonight. I'm going to read you sections of this. This piece is broken up into 6 parts. The whole piece together is called Who You Have Come to Be. And the individual titles are How It Starts, What to Do if His Phone Rings While He's in the Bathroom, when to be sure your time with him is up, why to go shopping after he's gone, where to go when you miss him, and then the final one is who you've come to be. And so it's really a list story of lists because each of the sections is a list and then it's a list of sections. And I was really intentionally trying to interrogate a relationship using the journalistic questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And so I started each list with one of those to try to explore the different aspects of this one fictional relationship. So I'm going to read you 3 of these pieces. Okay. What to do if his phone rings while he's in the bathroom. If at home, call for him softly. If in public, simply watch the caller ID until the last ring. In the final second, answer. Your voice slow and thick like honey from the refrigerator, and make it apparent the two of you are together, but without ever saying so. Place his phone just as it was before he left, sure to remove your hand before he enters the room. Tell him who called and that you answered, that she seems like a lovely girl, and you just wish he'd introduce you to more of his friends. If he smiles, fall back into what you were doing before he left and place a hand on his strong thigh at the soonest opportunity. But if he lifts his phone to scroll through the call log or says he didn't know she had his number, stay up after he falls asleep and sit in the dark of the bedroom, on the mattress you bought for yourself after college, between the sheets you washed just before you left for dinner, to record and double check every phone number you don't recognize. Why to go shopping after he's gone. New pajamas and sheets to make sure the bed doesn't smell like him tonight. Backless blouse for clubbing this weekend. Marlboro lights, carton. Necklace to replace the one he picked out. A new day planner without anniversary reminders. A box of hair dye, ash brown to forget the bottle blonde. A smooth metal trash can to fill with still framed pictures and emails printed to show friends. 24-pack of Yingling. Gasoline, at least a gallon, in case metal picture frames refuse to melt quickly. Sweater to wear while building the fire. And, just in case, a flavor-locked single-serving bag of the only Colombian roast he'd agreed to drink. Where to go when you miss him. The Applebee's on Main for lunch, despite the fact that he never bartends on Tuesday afternoons. A quiet cafe on Landon Street, isn't it just called cafe? That he frequents after work for a chai latte with extra milk, which is better than it sounds. The loud, smoky pool hall by the Civic Center where the two of you would play poker in the back on Thursdays. The Food Line by Waterfront Road that's only 3 blocks from his apartment and has beer for $1 cheaper than any other grocery in town. The Lowe's you went to get him a new drill and wrench set for Christmas last year. The Voodoo Shop on the boardwalk, owned by a woman who really is Creole and will build a doll out of a sock and 3 stray hairs for $30. Before home, to bed, where the sheets smell faintly of beer and sand, and there's nothing to remind you of how recently he was there. Thank you all so much. Are there any questions? Are there any, we can have a little Q&A if you all would like to engage me. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I would love to see the format of that list story. Is the document available since you can't share it by screen?
I can share it by screen. I just I couldn't share the whole thing at once, but I can pop it up to show it to you. That's totally fine. Yeah.
Curious to see the format, and also something like a detail of a voodoo doll that can be created with a sock and 3 hairs for $30. One
Mhm.
of the things that I always teach my students, and I try to practice myself, is how to conjure up such vivid happenstance details like that. So how do you generate your happenstance details, whether fact or fiction?
Oh, what a great question. I I stare at a lot of things, so I collect a lot of details through my eyes. I also I have the benefit of my undergraduate degree being an acting degree. And so I really learned to embody character before I even learned to write. And so I try to really deeply embody my characters and then do the fourth wall exercise that we do on stage, where I go, okay, so where are they? What are they seeing? What are they doing? And I try to sort of construct that around me in my mind and look around and see what's there. And that specific piece is written about a place I know. And so I'm familiar with that beach town where that character lives. And so that made it easier, of course. But yeah, thank you. That's actually, as I was reading it, I was like, God, I love that detail. That is one of my favorite details I've ever put into a story. I love that detail. So
Oh my,
thank
yeah, it says so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, I find especially in pieces this small and short, those details get pumped so big because relatively they're much bigger and take up so much more space in the piece, that I do spend a lot of time in revision really polishing images in Flash to make sure that they really sparkle and shine. And because I have so little room to put details in, I try to stack them like that. And so rather than just saying a voodoo doll, you know what I mean? I want it to be his hair. I want it to be his sock. I want it to be, I just try to go as deep and as detailed as possible. I normally have to pull back in writing, which I prefer. I think it's better to have too much and have to pull back than have to push further. So that's what I try to do. I try to go as far as possible each time.
And I
Um,
say to anybody who's like thinking of writing, just know that any detail that is around you is not to be overlooked, that all the details are a rich tapestry for content and conversation and observation and part of the story. And they really make such a difference, as we heard in your writing tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really make a point to try to be observant as I move through the world. And as many writers do, right? What is her name? Kirsten Valdez Quaid says that, and I was taught this in grad school, she carries a little notebook around so that she can write down one detail or one interesting thing every day. It doesn't have to be well written. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It needs to be something that caught her attention and connected her back to the world. And I say she does that because I now do it on my phone because I carry it around already. So I actually have in my notes app, I was showing somebody the other day that I have a note in here. I just wrote a poem, and so I have a note in there. One good line every day. And I try to write one good sentence every day or one really rich description every day. One day I was driving in Santa Fe and I saw on a chain link fence all these thrushes, the birds, thrushes, were crowded on these berries. It was the end of fall and they were trying to get the last berries. And so it was like this weird chunk of feathers fluttering on the chain link fence that I thought was something very different before I got close enough to see what it really was. And that went in there because it was just this weird observation that connected me back to the world and helped me see something in a new way. I had thought that it was like a dead bird caught in the fence, and it was actually, a dozen living birds continuing to live, feeding themselves. And I thought that was beautiful. So, but yeah, it's really about opening those senses, I think, and being willing to be observant, and not being afraid really of anything. I was going to say not being afraid of embarrassing yourself or being cringe, but yeah, not being afraid and just writing down what you observe very as courageously as you can, as honestly as you can. Yeah. Here, I want to bring up that story really quick so we can look at it, just so you all can see. There we go. So that was that first list story that I read to you, Places I Imagined My Wife. And you can see it's just one long continuous sentence with the semicolons connecting it together. So it's just one chunky paragraph. And I actually never even indent my list stories because you indent paragraphs, not lists. And so to keep them in the list form, I try to shove them over to the margin. I have one that actually has little underscores before it, that one is broken into sentences. It has an underscore before each sentence because it's a to-do list. And so those underscores are waiting for the check mark to be put there once the character actually does the thing, but they've not done any of the thing yet. Um, Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that. And here now I feel like we can look at all three of them if you'd like. You can see how teeny tiny my deepest regrets is. A tweet is not long. Tweet 140 characters is a really fabulous exercise in concision and in detail. How do I choose? Because I can choose 2 or 3 details. How do I choose the right ones and still have a narrative surround them? And I've published things with Nanoism that were not list stories, that were Twitter story in non-list form. But I love list stories. I think they're so fabulous. And so much of how we move through the world is sort of, that's how I think and move through the world a lot, I guess I should say. I sort of gather data and put that data together, right? As I get to know someone, I gather data about them, create sort of a list in my head for who they are. And so, in any case, let me see, someone said something in the chat. Oh, thank you, Bridget. Thank you.
I think Bridget had a question. Do you still want to
Yeah.
ask Bridget?
I do. It's okay. I was just kind of waiting for he actually kind of dove already into what I was going to ask. Jana was asking about happenstance, but my question is more towards because I'm a newer writer, right? And you're an experienced writer. How do you kind of drill down to the details? Like, just for instance, your deepest regret, like when I look at that, it's like a solid sentence, but within that sentence has these innate details, right, that make you feel some type of way. Like,
Mm.
I know by looking at them, like everybody has a sister, maybe they don't, some sort of a sibling, maybe even like a friend, right? It kind of is, my point is like the details drive how you feel about something. And so that's my question is how do you get those details not just written in a list form or written in your notes, but how do you drive towards getting those details in a format that's succinct that your readers are going to identify?
Yeah. That's so funny. As you were talking, I was like identifying a few things. I was like, oh, that's totally part of that. Oh my gosh. Bridget, I'm a very emotional person. I move through the world very emotionally. And just I process a lot through my emotions. And that helps me a lot because I sort of identify images with emotion. And so that helps me to sort of parse through and be like, well, wait, that image doesn't make me feel good. So I shouldn't put it there because I'm trying to uplift my readers there. I should move that down here where I'm trying to have a moment of, depth or stillness or something like that. And again, I think acting helps with that because I embodied characters. And so I feel them in my body pretty well. When I start writing a narrator, I tend to feel them in my body. But a lot of it is also you want to be as specific as possible and then create interest or complexity, right? And so I either want to create interest by getting so close, by giving you the details that put you so deep within that person's skin that you feel like you know who they are, or create some kind of juxtaposition, right? Like I very intentionally put on accident in my deepest regrets because cutting my sister's arm is different from cutting my sister's arm on accident, right? And on accident suddenly tells you something about this person and it deepens that experience because they hurt someone but they didn't mean to.
Right. And that's what I meant by
Yeah.
details, because if you just say, I regret little, cutting my sister's arm on accident, denying it all later, like denying it all later could fit with everything within that sentence. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. 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 Some of it is just sitting with it for a while and letting the details bubble up and then sort of engaging them when they do. Does that make sense? Cool, cool. And again, because I'm so character based, my process tends to go, I hear a few words in my head, or I make an observation and it means something to me. I go, oh my gosh, I just watched a breakup. Nobody else in this restaurant knows that those two people just broke up. And I know they did because of the words I just heard her say that were not, let's break up, right? Or I have something pop into my head when I look at something, and I write those words down really quickly and then sit with it. I actually just wrote a story I think I was telling Val about this. It's the longest short story I have ever written in my life. It's 19 pages. I wrote it in one sitting. I sat down for 8.5 hours and only got up to use the restroom and get another glass of water. That was it. It was based off 2 sentences that I wrote down 10 years ago. And I did not know where it was going to go when I sat down. That I couldn't get that line out of my head. For his protection, she hated him. I just couldn't get it out of my head. It kept replaying in my head. And I was like, okay, let me sit down and work with it. And I sat down and 19 pages flowed out. And so part of it, I really think, is letting it mature and marinate in your mind and letting it connect to those things. Yeah, yeah. And just remember that everybody goes through something unique, and has a completely different experience. You know what I mean? And so you're allowed to get really specific because specific things happen to people. Um, yeah. Oh, what is it? Flannery O'Connor. Flannery O'Connor said, if you survived childhood, then you have a lifetime of stories to write.
Right. And I think that people identify with, the grandma with their experiences. And like you said, when you connect the reader with their own experiences, it's how their interest peaks, right? It's how they're interested in the story, the tweet, whatever it is, the list.
Yes, yes. And that's one thing, one of the tricks of creative writing, one of the tricks. People come in and they say, I want it to mean everything to everyone. So they pull the details back because they want it to apply to everyone. And the magic of creative writing is the more specific you go, the more universal it becomes. Because we've all broken someone or broken something of someone's that we didn't mean to. That's my granny's stained glass, you know? I never broke my grandmother's stained glass. I probably wouldn't be here to tell the tale if I had. My grandmother loves her stained glass, you know? But it's something, because of that, it has this big meaning for me in my mind. And so I pull that out knowing that readers are going to go, that's like the time that I broke my mom's favorite lamp and I'm still living that down. And that specificity actually allows you to go there rather than blocking you from it. It's one of the crazy, magical, awesome things that it's one of the things that makes me love this craft so much is it has these strange counterintuitive moments. Let me see. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Jared, I saw that you had a hand up. Brandon has a question in the chat. And Connie, thank you so much for your comment. Jared, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Great job. Always
Thank
love your
you.
writing. Awesome. Um, that's cool. 19 pages, huh? In one sitting. Wow, that's great. That's great. It's like
Again,
Stephen King reading Carrie and writing Carrie in one night there. Yeah.
right, right. I actually once saw Joyce Carol Oates read live. As she read to us,
Really?
she was writing a new story in the margins. She didn't stop writing the entire time. She literally wrote the entire time she was reading, and she
Wow.
didn't miss a word. It was
Yeah.
weird to watch. It was eerie. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I felt very accomplished.
Her
And
writing's a
only
little
10
eerie
years.
sometimes, so
Yeah, it fits.
no, I'm teaching exploring creative writing. Hello, Studiantes who are here. Awesome, welcome.
Students.
But you're talking about all these cool different modes and mediums and ways of writing, the flash fiction, the list. What was this other one? The micro, what did you call it?
Yeah, microfiction is actually what a lot of
Yeah,
people
the micro fictions, right? Do you ever feel beholden to like a certain form? And when you do play around with these sort of different modes of writing, does that kind of change your approach, or do you feel like the topics change or word choices change, or like, because I feel like I'm been such a traditionalist my whole life. I'm always like, I gotta write like 30 to 40 page long chapters and like a massive novel, or
Yeah.
out, but like, I want to challenge myself more, especially like in this class I've been writing with everybody too. We're doing like epic poems, this week and stuff. But I don't know, how do you feel about that? Do you ever feel like you feel more confident doing this way than other ways, or I don't know, kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I feel more confident. I think for me, I normally explain flash fiction to students. It's like boxing, right? You have certain prize fighters. They're all prize fighters, right? All the people we're going to talk, they're all prize fighters. They have their different styles, but they all won that prize. Some of them go in and they need every single round to really slowly get to know their opponent and slowly wear them down. They make these moves, they're unexpected, and they keep you watching the fight for those reasons, right? Because you want to see their strategy, you want to see how they move, you want to see how they pull it off in the end. And then you have the prize fighters who walk in and need one hit, and that's it. And I love those prize fighters. I love that expression of craft and that expression of training that can just one page is all I get. You know what I mean? Like I don't have time to belabor this. Of course, then you flip that around, like you said, confidence. I'm far more confident in Flash because I am confident that I can fill up the space with something meaningful. Novels, it took me 10 years to write my first novel because I kept going, what am I going to say? Like, oh my God, there's so much space to fill. And that distracted me and really pulled me out of it. And Flash, I just sit down and relax. I was saying, I wrote a piece right before this started on my phone. I love to write on my phone. I love short little things. I don't know. I don't know. There's just something about it. I also think with flash fiction, you have a lot of freedom because you're only asking people to go through it for that much time, right? A novel, I have to love it to keep reading it because I have to keep reading it. I have to put it down and pick it back up and put it down and pick it back up. And um, yeah, Jana, seeing what you said in the chat, exactly, exactly. I think of Kathy Fish, who writes only flash fiction, and she's in the anthologies that we teach. She has a flash fiction story in the anthologies that we use at this school. And she only writes flash. So yeah, I love Flash, and I've been trying to get more into it because I pressured myself for a little while. I said, you have to write a novel. What are you doing? You're a writer. You have to write a novel, capital N novel. You know what I mean? And you don't. You don't. You don't. Writing isn't supposed to be laborious like that. I don't think it's supposed to have restrictions like that. I was actually noticing recently what you were saying as we move from one form to another. I wrote one piece that I very intentionally wanted to be a wall of text. I wanted it to fill a single page, have no indents, and meet the other margin. So I wanted it to look like one big paragraph, even though it was actually broken into different
Love
paragraphs.
that. Yeah. Because
Well,
writing can be like an art form, right? Itself, looking at it, it's yeah.
exactly. That's one thing. Like writing is so incredible. There are so many aspects to it and so many things you can do with it. You can have poems that make a shape, and that communicates more about the meaning.
Right.
Oh, Val, that makes me so happy. You should be writing. I know. Well, that's the
You
thing.
should, yeah.
So much pressure on ourselves, especially with writing, especially with the arts. We expect it better be incredible. I better pick up the paintbrush and go, cha, and it's perfect and incredible. And that's just not how it works. That's that piece that I wrote as a wall of text. Now it's actually 2 pages and it has paragraphs and indentions because as I went back in and started playing with it more, I was like, but wait, it's trying to say something else. And so I loosened it up a little bit and let the form be a little bit less restrictive. And now I think it's making its point better. And so, yeah, but that's hard to do. I had to let it sit for a few weeks and marinate and then come back to it and go, wait a minute, you're not working. And I think that's probably the hardest part of writing for me is that waiting until I know a little better and can return to it and lift it up. You know what I mean? Yeah, but yeah, I definitely think things change from form to form. I think it depends on the piece, but I once wrote a short story in my master's at Longwood. I wrote a short story that I turned into a screenplay and then turned back into a short story. And it actually remained pretty consistent in terms of like word choice and things like that. There was a lot of poetry in it, but I learned a lot about how I wanted that short story to look and what I wanted it to do as I flipped it to a different form and then flipped it back. Because I flipped it to screenwriting going, oh, this is perfect. Somebody said that would make a great screenplay. And I said, oh, this will be it. I turned it into a screenplay and looked at it and was like, I hate this. I was like, oh my God, I ruined it. Oh my God, it's so ugly like this. Why did I do
Right,
that?
right.
Flipped it back to a short story and I was like, Oh, there you are. Okay. Okay.
And now I love all that. We were talking about Carver, one of my favorite authors, and he never, he was working on a novel his whole life, but
Mhm.
some of his best stories are only like a page long, 2 pages. So, but I
Mhm.
challenged everybody to write Flash. We want to come to that workshop next
Good.
week.
Good.
That we're
Next
gonna bring
week,
our stories.
same
Yes,
time, same place. Do
I
it.
sent out the link. We're coming.
One of my
Thanks, Austin.
absolute favorites and absolute favorite list stories is Jamaica Kincaid's Girl. It does what flash fiction is supposed to do. It makes you deeply uncomfortable. It teaches you something about the world. It takes you somewhere emotionally, and it does it in a freaking page. It's such an incredible short story. It was actually the short story that made me first write Flash, and I wrote a piece that was in the style of, and it was a gay son asking his mother questions, trying to hide that he was gay and how he should move through the world. Because I was just
Okay. Okay.
so moved by Jamaica Kincaid that I was like, oh my God, I have to do this exact thing. And it stuck
Right.
with me.
Maybe
It's
you
so
can send
wonderful.
that to me. I could put it in the Canvas page for everyone. But yeah.
Sure, sure. I
Yeah.
love that. And yeah, and it's on my website also. I can
Oh, okay. Nice. Perfect.
AustinEichelberger.com. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
But I'll send that one to you specifically.
Okay. Sweet. I'm
Yeah,
cutting into Brandon's time. So
no worries. Brandon, you want to share with us? Is he still here? Is Brandon still with us?
Hey, can anybody hear me?
Yes, yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, the first story I wanted to touch on because I was running while I was listening to it, and I felt my pace pick up subconsciously as it was going on, not even realizing it. Um, that when you were creating the images, first of all, the crocodiles in the fresh water, I love the fact that you chose crocodile specifically
Mhm.
because it's such an irrational fear in a fresh water source.
Yeah.
And I have a lake house that I go to, and every time I swim in it, I look behind me and I know there's going to be a shark there. Just
Mhm.
yeah, I'm always looking for him. But that story in particular, did you have a psychological horror in mind while you were writing it? Because the tension that was built from Alex being as manipulative as he was to how isolated the protagonist was to being in what seemed like open water, and the indifference of the people around him. In my opinion, the best horror stories are the ones that you don't know you're in them. Uh,
Yes.
were
Yes.
you kind of aware of how well it worked as somewhat of a horror story as you were doing it?
I did only because I normally do not do this. This is one of the only stories that I've done this for. This one is based off a nightmare I had.
Hmm.
Brandon actually went to college with me. So Brandon actually knows the ex-boyfriend that this story is about. Yeah, it's about Ben. I had a
Hmm.
nightmare. And it was over winter break. It was when I was living off campus in an apartment. So I was
With
alone.
Ross?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
in
yeah.
that house. No one was there. I was alone for like 2 weeks during break. And
Hmm.
so I've been alone for a few days, and I just had this insanely vivid nightmare. I awoke from it sweating and out of breath. I literally awoke sitting up, like, oh, I was so anxious. And I just went straight to my computer and sat down and just started
Hmm.
writing. And this is what came out. And actually, I still had the image of his face because the dream was very much like this. Some of it is shifted, of course, but the last thing that happened in the nightmare was I was laying on the dock and he leaned down to kiss me. And when he leaned close and his face filled my vision, that's when I woke up. And so I actually wrote this whole thing with that image in my head, just his
Yeah.
face floating in front of me. And so this one I did only because it came from a nightmare and I was feeling that tension anyway. And that's what I wanted to communicate. And so yeah, but
Yeah, very
normally I have
well.
a much harder time judging it.
No, yeah, because yeah, like that's I got very claustrophobic listening to it, and it reminded me of what I was thinking the entire time was it even if it's not a horror story, it seems like it's a pretty plausible situation to
Mhm.
find oneself in that just happens to be horrifying.
And to me, those are the best horror stories.
Agreed. Agreed.
Like you said, like where you realize it's a horror story and you're like, oh, that takes this to a different level. Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, you reminded me of something. I saw recently someone online, I believe an English teacher, said that a student of theirs said, it is wrong of us to assume that any character knows what genre of story they're in.
Oh my
And I
God, that's
love that
prophetic.
idea,
Yeah.
right? They should
Yeah.
never know they're in a horror story. That makes it so much more horrifying. They should never know it's a comedy. That makes it so much funnier that it always takes it to this other level if they don't have a full awareness of it, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate that.
No, thank you. Yeah, that was great.
Thanks. Zoe, I see you have a hit up Zoe. Zoe. I know a
Yeah,
Zoe and I know a Zoe, so sorry, I didn't want to get it wrong.
no, you can call me either. This is probably an existential question, but I mean, with writing, I feel like I've got a lot to say. But I also don't do it because I feel like I'm yelling into the void. And
Hmm.
like, who's gonna read it? Who cares? Like, everyone's got something to say. This is the digital age. Like, everything is just, I mean, I could toss out 100,000 ideas, but I'm just screaming into space. It feels like that, right? So it's kind of like, I wonder if you have anything to say about what's the point of writing and like why, why should we do it? Like I like to do it. I mean, there's all these reasons, but I just,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's pretty, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, you named one of the most important reasons because we want to, because we're human beings and we can choose to do it, and so we do. And for me, though, I think it is a very important way that humans process. I think it's a very, very important way that we process the world around us and communicate that to other people, right? One thing I always tell my students, and pat myself on the back for it. Huh. My family went into the sciences. They're all scientists, all of them, with one exception. My older brother, David, he and I are the only two who went into the arts. And my mom, who's a doctor, will say, oh, well, she doesn't mean to, but she condescends creative writing sometimes. And I'll go, well, the things that people like me wrote 2,000 years ago, we still read. The things that actually last from cultures are the arts. Math too, because math is pretty constant, right? But when we look at their science and their ideas about social situations and politics, we're like, oh my God, like, no, 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 leave all of that in the past. This is actually what we get to take into the future because it is us defining ourselves as human beings. Um, and actually, one thing you said that you have so many things to say, that's one reason why I write Flash because I want to say so many things and I don't want to be constrained in a novel to say all of them. Like I said, I've written a novel at this point and I like novels, but they're very different. Novels are a long drawn out idea, if not many drawn out ideas. And yeah, I have a lot of things I want to say, and sometimes they only take a few pages. I think they carry the same importance. I think one or two of them are actually better stated than a novel in that teeny space because they're accessible. And so that's the thing I would say. Remember that voids have a lot of space in them. And that is good and bad, right? It feels like it's not hitting on anything, but there's actually a ton of other people in that void. I was actually thinking just a few hours ago as I drove home from Santa Fe, I was thinking about how writers have such a different job now because millions of people can connect to our writing like that right away. I mean, people just need an internet connection. Otherwise, you used to have to buy their books. That's one reason why people didn't read very much because people didn't want to pay for a taxing experience. And now people read more than they ever have, and they have more access than they ever have. So I would remember that the universe is a void, and yet here we are, right? Life occurs in voids. Wonderful, beautiful things exist in void. Um, but I know that feeling. I know that feeling intimately. I know it so well. My first national publication was when I was 16. So I've been doing this publishing for 23 years. And there have been years that I've gone, what am I doing? What is wrong with me? Why did I choose this? What am I doing? And every single time I come back from that, I'm so glad I did. Because for me, writing is a way of understanding the world. And it's not just about publishing and giving it back to the world and to other people. It's about me. I have pieces that I needed to write. I actually wrote a piece at the beginning of the summer that I have very intentionally not shown anyone because I know it's not good, but I sobbed as I wrote it. I sobbed, wept in a way that I normally do not and have not in a very long time. I wept because I needed to write that. I really needed to process that at that high level of engagement where I was completely into that thing, but masking it. It was allowed to be something else in that moment. And I think that allowed me to get closer and to feel what I needed to feel to move through. So to me, writing is important for so many reasons. It's not only a record, it's, not only a way for us to look back and remind ourselves that humans have always felt these ways, that heartbreak is always hurt, that students have never done all their readings, that, like these problems have always existed, in ancient cities, literally in ancient cities, they used to say, the students are not how they used to be. That's not a new invention. I had a teacher who used to say, every generation thinks they invent sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and none of them did. And, writing reminds us of that we've always been just like this, yeah, but I also just want to say, if you love it and it helps you, you don't need any other reasons, and nobody else ever needs to see it. Emily Dickinson didn't publish a single thing in her lifetime. She died thinking that no one would ever read her writing, and she has changed American poetry. I don't want to say more than anyone else, but on a level with the greats. I mean, she changed American poetry fundamentally. She actually invented the M dash, that beautiful long dash that we use. She invented it. It's one reason why it gets used so many different ways, because she never got to tell anybody how to use it correctly. And so people use it kind of however they want that seems to align with what she originally did. Um, I read recently that F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby, when he died, this book was considered a failure, and it was his biggest financial burden. He died thinking this book was a failure, and it is now called the capital T American novel, you know? And so it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. I have found I have better experiences with writing when I don't focus on that end result. I just let myself do the process and live in the process. And that means that some days I finish the process and I go, oh, that's crap. Some days I finish the process and I go, oh, that's wonderful. Some days I have something publishable, some days I don't. But I know that I'm engaging with myself in a very specific way that I need. I need. Um, yeah, and I would truly, truly say, if you love it, you don't need other reasons. Don't let anybody else pressure you to have other reasons. You're allowed to hold this close to you just because you love it. That's it, and it's yours. You're allowed to make it however you want and whatever you want. I had a teacher who used to say, if you can't think of what to write, just type the word shit until something else comes into your mind. Like you can do this however you want. You can make it as fun or as miserable as you want. And unfortunately, a lot of us make it more miserable than we mean to, but you're allowed to let it be fun and make it fun. Yeah, I hope that helps. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. I think that was that's engaging and positive, and I got a lot of imagery when you were speaking that about the void and yelling into the void, and
Mhm.
and then like and then you catch things. You're like throwing lines out into the void, and then it hooks something, and you never know what that's going to be, right? So that's exciting. It's like fishing,
Yes, and that's what I was thinking as you were saying that. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But
Mhm.
exactly. Oh, exactly. I also remind my students, because it is so easy to write and feel like it's going nowhere or what have you. To Kill a Mockingbird, until she died, that was her only book. Her only book until we discovered that other manuscript in the attic, which still is contested. Some people say she didn't write that, her assistant did in her style, you know. That was her only book. Every single high schooler in the United States reads it. She wrote one thing, and it was that important that everybody reads it. Writing is like that. Art is like that, you know? Like you said, you never know when you'll throw the hook in and go, this is the fish I've been waiting for my whole life. But if you aren't at the water throwing your hook in, you ain't gonna get anything, you know? Um, yeah, but I hold really strongly to the idea that writing is not just a practice about the outside, that it really is a practice about the inside as well, and helps us get to know ourselves and how we view the world. I think it was Mark Twain who said, "How am I supposed to know what I think until I write it down?" And I think very much in a similar way. Yeah. Thank you, so. Thank you. Let me see. Oh, I love that. Jared, I love that. Perhaps it's the short story writers who are the ones completing the most. You know, well, that's one thing. It's like poets write short pieces, but they tend to write a ton of them. And so poets tend to write more, even if we don't read more of their work, and even if it doesn't add up to more pages. And that's what
Yeah,
I'm,
you you kind of blew my mind there, you guys. All of you guys for a second, I was like, oh man, that makes so much sense. Because really what you're doing is completing the entire story, right?
uh-huh,
Whereas I look at novels as chapters are like these short stories within these larger pieces that where
uh-huh.
you're the whole piece, right? And then another whole piece and another whole piece. And
Yep.
you're completing way more than a complete me thinking completionist. Well, actually, maybe it's the
Uh-huh.
opposite, right? I'm the one dilly-daddling, eating the what is Odysseus eat the like lilies or whatever,
Oh, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing. I got into writing a few years later than a lot of people do because I didn't major in it in undergrad or anything like that. And a lot of people sort of go to college knowing they want to be a writer or something like that. And I felt like I had to catch up. I measure a story is a story. If a story is whole and complete, it's a story. It counts. I don't care if it's a sentence or if it's 1,000 words. To me, they're supposed to do the same intrinsic thing, which is tell me a story that feels whole. And if you can, yeah, yeah. And I do have to say, there are days when you just need to write something only 2 pages long and have it be done. And you're like, oh my God, I'm done. Look at how great I am. I just completed something. Okay. And then you can walk back and do the dishes and deal with your screaming cat. You know what I mean? That's my experience, of course, but But yeah, yeah, for me, it's a deep type of processing. That story that I wept about, or wept as I was writing it, um, I know it's not good because it's provocative. It's not evocative. It does not uh, help feelings to rise within the reader. It sort of forces those feelings a little bit by being a little extreme. But it's about a dad whose son was killed in a hate crime. And it's like something I just needed to write to come to terms about who I am in this world and how I fit into it, you know? I just needed to be upset about that for a little while. And I needed a private space to be allowed to be. And I had it. And I had it. And I can take that and never show it to anybody, you know? And who knows, then when I'm dead, they'll look back at my files and they'll go, why didn't he publish this brilliant piece? But but yeah, I stick to you're allowed to make it whatever you want. And you're allowed to let it take a long time. You're allowed to I wrote 2 sentences for that story, 19 pages. I wrote down 2 sentences 10 years ago. I was a rock thrower, and for his protection, I hated him. And they sat in a document on my computer for a literal entire decade. And at the beginning of the summer, I just thought about living in that house. And I thought about the neighbor's kid who I'd written those sentences about. And there it came. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the other fun things about this and why Mark Twain said, how do I know what I think until I write it down? Because we do this deep subconscious processing. And sometimes we don't bring it back up to the front to like check our thinking and reassess. And obviously it ripples back up to the front, but we don't do the conscious process of like looking straight at it. And I think fiction can let us do that, can help us do that. And who was it? The lead singer of The Doors said, sometimes you have to surround the truth rather than go straight through it. And I think fiction is a really good avenue for allowing us to move around the truth in order to understand it better, rather than trying to pierce it. You know what I mean? I want to see some of Zoe's work now, by the way. After, yeah, Jared's hyping you up in the chat.
Next week for sure, Zoe.
Oh yeah, awesome. Perfect. Cool. Oh, Jana, I love what you said to Zoe. You are worth your words. Yes. And remember, that's part of the fantastic value of writing. It allows an individual to speak to the whole world. The whole. And all of us are so alone. Like, I'm literally gonna get a little weird because when I talk about writing like this, it just like we are so alone in this universe. And this is one of those things that connects us together and lets us think for half a second that we're not. Does that make sense? That pushes us into the space of each other and helps us go, you thought that too? You felt that too. Thank you. Oh my God. Sometimes just knowing somebody else has gone through it lets you breathe easier and keep moving, you know? And that's so much of this for me. It's just like recording the human experience so that we can look back and be like, yeah, it was like that. Good or bad, you know? Some days it's like, yes, it was like that. And some days it's like, yeah, it was like that. But I mean, you know, the first one allows me to love life even more because I remember those good moments, and the second one allows me to be grateful I got through it. But they help me reconnect to myself and to others. And yeah, I think it's just one of the most important practices you can do. I feel similarly about visual art too. I think you should pick up crayons at the restaurant and sit there and draw. I think you should get as much out of your noodle as you can. Excellent piece about why. Ooh, I'm going to be reading this, Jana.
I highly recommend you teach this piece. This is one of the pieces I teach in every class. And it opens up such a broad conversation. It's such a beautiful piece.
Yes, I mean, just reading the beginning. I'm going to read the beginning of this to y'all because it's exactly what we're talking about, and he's put it so much better than I could. Why? Because poetry is the language of the imagination, and you need a larger imagination. Because you need more than a gun and a jug of water. Because you have explicable and inexplicable needs, and the world is full of things, and you want some of them, and to get them, you need to be able to say them and think them. Because undigested biography is boring. Because what we call sincerity is an oversimplification. Oh, I love that line. Sincerity is an oversimplification. Yeah, that is one other thing that I do treasure about fiction. It reminds us of the humanity in each other. The most important thing you can have for fiction is an understanding of other people's humanity and a way to try to connect to it. You have to remember it every single second. Even the people on death row were babies being held in their mother's arms. Like there was a point at which they had done nothing wrong. And there's a core, a little seed within them that is still that innocent baby trying to figure life out and trying to make it through. And if you can not project that onto other people, I don't want to say it like that. If you can recognize that core, that light in other people, generally you can write good fiction because you have to have deep empathy. And if you can give that empathy to other people on the page, it becomes so much easier in the world. And all of a sudden, the world is a little bit better. I don't know. Yeah. Jared, I'm going to hold you to that headline. I'm going to make you write that article one day. Um, well, thank you all so much. Are there any other questions before we go? Or thoughts? Anything at all?
Thank you,
Jokesy.
Austin. This is a great introduction to what we have ahead for us for the semester. You are inspiring, and it's so nice to have everyone here enjoying this all together. So thank you.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Come back next week for the creative session where we'll be talking about Flash, and hopefully people will be walking away with a Flash piece, with a list story. Just saying. Thank
Can't
you all so
wait.
much for being
Great.
here. And
Have a good night.
I see a Mr. E in there. Thank you. Thank you for being here. One of my students. Thanks, y'all. And thank you for being here, Jana. I can't wait to read the rest of that.